Hello everyone, welcome back to Alkaline Hydroxide 784. And today, in the GP overview series, we'll be looking at the topic, rather than a topic, it's more of an event, which is called the Olympics. I think you all know what that is. Before I start, let me give a very sad little monologue. If you want to skip it, you can probably skip like 1 minute later or something. Okay, anyways, the thing is, I wasn't in the mood to do the other topics I wrote down, so you know, yeah, that's why there's a weird topic today. Uh, for your information, I'm for sure 95% of the time eliminating the sports questions on the GP paper without batting an eyelid. But if I look at the 12 questions and there's a question on sports, I'll immediately strike it off. I will not do it. Well, don't get me wrong, I personally like playing certain sports. Not that I do it that much, but I do enjoy them if I do it, in a sense. With a catch. It has to be either be like super simple, like most like the simplest kind of games, not that many rules. Like it's very easy to understand and play. Like captain's ball. That's just pretty much two teams, you pass the ball from one side to the other, and that's pretty much it. Or maybe the wacky version of an original sport. So if if I'm playing badminton and I'm laughing more than actually playing, then yeah, that's the kind of thing I like to do. Or if you look at captain's ball itself, if you play it while holding the ball with the back of your hands, yeah, you can actually do that. And I kind of invented that. It is actually quite fun. Okay, cool. Never mind, that's not the point. So as you'd imagine, I don't really follow actual sports stuff. I don't watch it. I don't care for football or soccer or whatever you call it, or cricket for that matter. At most, the only thing I might probably watch is maybe a tennis match or a badminton match because that's actually quite fast. It happens quickly and it's very intense. But even then, I don't really actively go and watch it. I don't actively seek it as much as I seek scientific content. So, yeah. What I do like to watch is the wacky games that people play in Korean variety shows. So, yeah, as you can see, it matches with my actual interests. Makes sense. Yeah, so this explains why I have literally zero knowledge about sports, apart from maybe the news about all those betting scandals that comes out. And by knowledge, I mean basically about why people like a certain team or why this certain team keeps losing and stuff like that. I don't know about that kind of thing. I may probably know the rules, but I don't know anything else apart from that. Okay, yeah. So you might be wondering, well, this needlessly boring monologue aside, why am I doing this? Yeah, we are going to be talking about the Olympics and the various issues surrounding it. And the reason why is because it's, kind of being a topic in the news because of the current pandemic. It has been postponed to next year. So, it seems like worthwhile to be talking about it. It actually just came in my mind. And yeah, so let's start. Since the Olympics is more of a quadrennial event rather than a generic phenomenon, let me just interest you in its history instead of a definition. So basically, the Olympics started as some sort of a religious ritual for the Greek god Zeus in Olympia, Greece. And there, at that point of time, really, really long ago, like the warriors in ancient Greek decided to participate in various sports. I mean, there weren't that many at the time, like about 5 different events. And after this certain period of time, I think after BC 550, there was a big hiatus, and then the modern version came along, which was started by a French guy, and he suggested this, and then the other people, like the other delegates from the other countries, liked the idea so much that they started the game 2 years later in Greece itself, in Athens. And there you have it, the start of the Olympics as we know it today. You can find out more on the links because this is not really that interesting. Like, it's not really that important for GPSA. The other stuff that's happening nowadays or maybe in the recent past is kind of more important for us. Anyways, just some quick other for your information kind of stuff. The motto of the Olympics means faster, higher, stronger, which kind of makes sense. And also kind of makes sense why people are trying to win and break records all the time. And the rings those 5 rings, they symbolize the coming together of 5 continents. So I suppose, but there are actually 7 continents. And if you minus Antarctica, then there's 6. Oh well, never mind. Uh, I don't want to think about that. Okay, so let's get on with the important stuff, shall we? So the first issue is the economics of the Olympics. So the most important thing to take note of is that Olympics is very expensive. It's an expensive thing. It's an expensive event. So imagine a poor country allocating resources to the Olympics. If they are hosting the Olympics, they will have to do that, right? So if they do that instead of their own development or important actual stuff that the country needs to allocate money to, that will be kind of detrimental in the long term. So for example, in 2016 Olympics, which is actually the last one so far, because this year's one has been postponed. Anyway, so in 2016 Brazil spent like money on the games instead of on development that would help the poorest. And you can look at the article about that if you want. So that's not really good. So you might be wondering why the Olympics are so expensive. So that's the explanation. First of all, the first step in Olympics is that the country has to bid. So the countries that want to host it have to give a bid and say, oh, we're gonna host it. And the country that wins the bid gets to host the games. And the bidding process itself uses up a lot of money. I guess this could be a surprise to some of you because it was a kind of a bit of a surprise to me. The countries can spend like at least $50 million just on the bidding part. And that's not even with the guarantee that they will get to host it. And that's kind of scary. That's a lot of money just to bid to host the games. And if the country is successful, they would then need to spend even more money just to do the whole games situation. So first thing they'll probably need to do is to build like special stadiums to host the games. And this especially so if they're doing it for the first time, they probably wouldn't have the equipment or the stadium to actually host the games. And these things will be expensive too. And also they have to have the athletes village, that place where all the athletes have to come and stay, and also cater to them like their food or any other needs that they have. And also they have to have advertising fees. Advertising is quite a big business. And they have to plan the opening and the closing events. Yeah, and those events are pretty much like NDP level craziness. So they probably do use up a lot of money just doing that. And yeah, you get the idea. And apart from that, there's all the people they have to hire to conduct each game, record everything, test people for doping and stuff like that. And then also the broadcasting part. Although the broadcasting technically should give them some money rather than them spending it. But yeah, you get the idea. But if they do not sell it to anyone, they would have to deal with the cost of broadcasting as well. And the money that goes into all of this, this is just so unimaginable for us plebeians. So yeah, it's just a huge amount. You don't want to think about it. Okay, so yeah, that's why I said yeah, it's not really that good for the poor countries. But anyways, so are there benefits to spending this much money? And are countries like bidding just to look cool, be like, oh look, I can host this, I can do this? Like, are they really into this thing just to have like a reputation or showing off kind of thing? Not necessarily, because we do have that argument that they're doing it just to show off. But even the whole showing off can lead to certain positives for the country. And that's the main thing that can happen is because they show off with their games, people are attracted to come to the country. Like, it's like advertisement of its own. So the tourism in the country will probably increase usually, but it doesn't do that all the time. It kind of depends on the circumstances as well. So yeah, that's what I've written here for this advertising that comes from the games attracts tourism or maybe interest in the products that the country produces. But for this, the country must have a successful run of the games, and they must not face any dire situations like a pandemic or something like that. We'll look at that later. And usually one of the side effects of this is that they build more hotels because a lot of people will suddenly come and stay in that country for that period of time. Yeah, so that's one side effect. Okay, so And as we saw, since so many people have to be hired, there is a decrease in unemployment. But the thing is, this is temporary. So usually after the games, the people don't have a job anymore, and there'll be some people who have jobs for a longer term, especially if it's like hotel jobs. Like the new hotels who have the people for the long term. But like people who are there just for the games part of it won't have a job after the games are over. So yeah, that's kind of sad. But at least they get some employment for that period of time. And yeah, so now let's look at the revenue part of it. So the country can technically gain revenue from the Olympics. And this would include selling the broadcast rights, because these things are expensive too. They're a whole nother bidding war. And they sell expensive tickets to viewers. The tickets are at least, I don't know, I think they're like $3,000 or something. So yeah. And then selling merch and other stuff. It's kind of like how when we had the YOG here in Singapore, there was all this merch about the mascots and everything. Yeah, so stuff like that can earn them some revenue. And speaking of expensive tickets, the thing about the tickets is that they lead to people watching it on TV instead of buying the tickets. And if you think about it, it's probably likely that they'll get better revenue if the people bought tickets instead of watching it on TV, because the amount of money that they get from the broadcasting rights may not be equal to the amount of money that the broadcaster actually gets from broadcasting the thing. So yeah, it won't be as much compared to the ticket sales if everyone were to buy a ticket, in a sense. Yeah, so this means that there's less revenue from tickets, and even worse, even the TV viewership is decreasing, so people seem to be less interested in the Olympics. Or maybe they only want to watch certain bits because TV allows them to do it, or increasingly nowadays, probably YouTube allows them to do it, and they don't have to watch literally everything. They don't want to watch everything. They only want to watch maybe that one or two events that they really care about, and then after that, just go about watching other things, which are understandably more entertaining to at least some of us. Anyways, but there are definitely some benefits, as you've seen. If in the sense, if you're a poor country, the disadvantages can be so huge that you'd be better off not hosting it. Like they may outweigh the benefits per se, or the benefits may not really be benefits anymore. And why? As I mentioned earlier, we saw that the games are expensive. And that's like the thing I mentioned earlier, is when the poor country allocates huge sums of money to the games instead of to development and stuff like that, it's kind of stupid. I mean, by poor country, I don't really mean to say the country is not like economically well or something, but generally it's the developing countries, and it's more like countries that can't really afford to have luxurious stuff like Olympics, but they do have enough money to at least do something. But instead of using that money to do the important stuff, they use it for the luxury stuff, and therefore they kind of end up disadvantaging themselves. Yeah, that's what I mean. So that's why it's kind of stupid if you think about it. And even if you think that the stadium and all that stuff, it's kind of like development too. You're building new architecture. Well, think of it this way. Just how many people will find the use out of a fancy Olympic-sized stadium after the Olympics? They're all too busy going to work, trying to get money, trying to stay alive, that kind of stuff. I don't think an Olympic-sized stadium is going to interest them in any way. A normal stadium will do a trick. So, yeah. And it's not like the country is going to quickly host another games, especially if they're poor. Like, if they spend so much money, they don't really have the remaining money to spend again, and they can't do it anytime soon. So the stadiums are just going to be sitting around doing nothing, unless they are successful tourist attractions, I suppose. But even then, there's nothing much to really do there except stare at it and take a picture and then go. Yeah, I can't really get admission tickets out of that. So yeah, that's a problem. And if you are a poor country, you are less likely to have sufficient infrastructure to begin with, and therefore they're actually more likely to have to spend money on building big fancy stadiums. Let's take it, if you look at it the other side, usually countries that have already hosted the games or are quite rich would have already built a big enough stadium for the games, kind of like the sufficiently sized stadium. Like in Tokyo, they probably already have the Olympic stadium from the last time that they hosted the games. So if they really wanted to just do it in the same place, they can do it without an issue. They don't have to spend extra money on the stadium. But if you're like a country and you're doing this for the first time and you don't have a great stadium to begin with, you had to spend money on the stadium. So in that sense, it seems like it's a problem just to get for a country to even host a game, because they're kind of forced into this whole big money spending if they get to host the games. So what does that mean? Are we supposed to ban them from hosting if we feel that they do not have the economic infrastructure or the means to, like, if we feel that it will actually detriment them? Well, I guess it's kind of a bit problematic. As you could imagine, you can make your own arguments on that. It will be quite complicated, and also it might be a bit unfair to these countries because they also want to host the games in a sense. So maybe there's other solutions that you can probably think of in order to help them host the games without, detrimenting the economic problems in the sense, the economic status in the sense, yeah. Anyways, moving on. So the second issue that we're going to look at is pandemics and Olympics. Can they coexist peacefully? Right, I kind of like the title. It looks so nice and rhyming. Okay, anyways. The thing is, this is probably the only reason why I thought about it, because of the pandemic. And we already have two convenient recent case studies here. The first one is Zika, which happened in 2016, and the Olympics still went on. And today we have a delayed, like the Olympics being delayed by the current pandemic. And yeah, those are the two case studies. So if you want to see any links or stuff, you can look at it on your own. But the thing is that I want to discuss is the future implications and trends. So as you can see, a lot of new diseases are popping up more rapidly than ever. In like just the last few years, there have been quite a few different diseases that have been spreading quite easily. And there's various reasons as to why this is going on, and I would need a whole episode just to cover that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in it, maybe I can do one. But that's for that episode maybe. But for now, what we look at is that the Olympics is something that usually happens without fail. So it's scheduled to happen every 4 years. It's not like flexibility or something like that. And when you have all these new diseases that are going to be coming up sooner, like they keep popping up in the next few years, it's kind of a problem. It may affect Olympics in the future. Of course, at the same time, some of you might be asking me like, okay, it seems like you can still conduct the Olympics while the disease outloos. 2016 they did it. Zika was going on, and they conducted the Olympics, and it seemed to go well. But there's a caveat or two, I would say. First of all, the Zika virus isn't nearly as dangerous to athletes. I mean, the main problem with that was that it affected people who were giving birth, and the babies the babies were born from this. And athletes don't really seem to be people who would be giving birth anytime soon, because they're there not to do that but to participate in a competition. And the second thing is there's already a vaccine. I think, yeah, there's a vaccine for Zika, so you don't have to worry about having the disease for too long and then succumbing to it. But the current one is quite different because it has implications for everyone, and there is no vaccine at the moment that is approved for use. I know there's a lot of vaccines that have been developed, but none of them have been approved for use yet. So having a games in that situation may not be good. And honestly, it makes sense that they delayed it. So the thing that I want to discuss here, or at least ask about, is that in the future, there's going to be way more unprecedented viruses. There's actually quite a few reasons why this could be the case, but I'm not going to discuss that here. But in a way, it's likely that there will be more such viruses in the future, and we had to prepare for them, obviously. So how will that affect the games? Well, for many other activities, as we have seen during this current pandemic, you can actually do stuff from home. Like you can do work from home, you can do virtual stuff, or streaming certain things. You can easily stream certain stuff. But of course, at the same time, there's a lot of things that cannot really be done completely virtually. It needs to have people who, next to each other doing certain things together. And yeah, so this would apply for the games as well. In theory, we could have pure streaming for the games where we don't have an audience, we just have the competition and we just stream that. But for the first thing is that is not fun at all. That is really sad. This is gonna drain the motivation of the athletes because there is no audience to cheer them on. The coaches won't be able to cheer them on, and that wouldn't be nice. That'll be quite sad. And the other problem is it doesn't really remove the whole social distancing issue altogether because the athletes themselves are next to each other, and the cleaning problems will be quite a mess, like the hygiene related things that you have to do because in sports there's like sweat, and there's also pools like swimming pools, and those are actually quite a nightmarish thing to have to clean as well. And also the testing part, which I mean technically they probably would be able to do that because they already do doping tests, so they probably have the infrastructure to do that. And there's other concerns as well, so it's going to be quite hard to actually implement a games like that in a sense. So this would require more personnel. Of course, maybe that would help to decrease the unemployment rate, but that's not really the most important reason thing here. But the more important thing is that it'd be quite stressful. It induces even more stress into an already stressful event. And it's not just about the people organizing it, it's also about the athletes. They'll be even more stressed. I mean, they're literally representing their country when participating, and this is like just an added amount of stress. Like the whole situation just gives an extra level of stress. So yeah, really, we would have to start considering this in future Olympics and figuring out ways to, like strategies on how to do it when stuff like this happens. And by we, I do not refer to myself, I refer to the IOC. They had to figure it out, I'm sorry. But yeah, that's that issue. So yeah, anyways, let's move on before I end up breaking the record for longest video on this channel or something. Okay, luckily it's not the longest video yet. It's still like about 20 minutes to do that. Anyways, so the third issue is, okay, I'm gonna read it. Doping and vapor flying. What's the future for cheating rules? I'm not sure whether that sounded cool or not, but anyways. Let's look at the old and the new. That's the order of that title, the old stuff and the new stuff. So the old thing is, of course, doping. So let's just face it, everyone came to a game to win, but not everyone is able to win a medal or trophy. And those who don't win either take their participation as a win, or they train harder and then try to win the next time. Or if they feel like training harder isn't going to help them win, they resort to stuff like doping, or maybe other methods that they think might help them win. So of course, doping is illegal, and in the game they actively test all of the athletes before they even participate in the games. And there was this big scandal in this one, in the Olympics, and that involves a bunch of Russians as usual. Okay, maybe I shouldn't say as usual, but yeah, there was a doping scandal with a bunch of Russians, and this thing happened last year, so they had like this ban of 4 years. But the thing is, there's actually a lot more to this issue, so you might want to read the articles for more info. In fact, there's actually a lot of people who are there's a lot of things that are happening because Russia probably meddled with the data that they submitted to the IOC or something like that. Just a lot of fishy stuff going on. And another thing that you probably would want to know is that apparently the Russians can still participate if they go under a neutral flag. Without their country flag, they just participate independently. They can still participate. So I'm not sure what kind of a ban it is. It's not really a ban. It's just a warning card that Russia doesn't care about. Okay. Doping aside, what's a vaporfly? What was that I was talking about at the beginning of this particular issue? This is a whole nother controversial kind of an issue. And what this whole thing is about is that, the sports company Nike, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but the one which has the tick as their symbol, you know what that is. And they made this shoe called the Vaporfly, and it is pretty epic because it can make people run faster or something, or like run with lesser energy required to run, and that is kind of epic in a way. Yeah, so that is cool. And yes, I do know that for centuries people have definitely used custom, garb, like custom clothes or stuff. You know what I mean, the clothes or the shoes or the rackets or whatever, that the thing that they're using to help them perform their best at the games. But the thing is, these Vaporfly shoes are so good that they give such a big difference. It feels more like cheating than just helping. That's how terribly good they are. And what's worse, apparently sports companies usually test their shoes as prototypes before they, send it out in the market. So who will they test it on? They give it to athletes. And no one really knows who is wearing what. So no one would have known who was actually using Vaporflies before they were released officially. Okay, maybe they probably do know, but to some extent, some of these shoes would have the same kind of fate in a sense. So now that leads to a lot of complications. We do not know if anyone was supposedly quote unquote cheating while wearing these or something, but yeah, that's a problem of its own. And such technology, yes, this is also considered a technology because they're not just normal shoes. Such technology can become even more prominent in the coming years, as with any kind of technology, I suppose. So yeah, IOC and whatever host country that hosts the games in upcoming years will have to work together to figure things out eventually. Of course, right now the main thing that they've told is to ask these shoe companies to stop producing these shoes. Instead of really banning the shoes, they just ask them to stop producing it, which I'm not sure if anyone's really gonna listen to that, but okay, that's a solution, I suppose. Anyway, they probably don't really have much demand to produce it right now, given that everyone is in given the current situation. But anyways, yeah, but if you think about it, right, the record breaking that people have been doing over the years, like in each of the events, there's someone new always breaking the record, right? And this could actually be attributed to better garb, like their clothes or the stuff that they're using, the equipments. And yeah, it's kind of a tricky thing to talk about because it's not really it's a bit different from doping. It's more of just a thing that they are wearing. And sometimes people need to wear a certain thing because it helps them for their health as well. So it's a bit tricky to differentiate, those two things, and also like tell people to not wear a certain thing and make everyone wear only the same set of clothes and stuff, because that may not end well for some of the people. So at the essence of this entire issue is basically fairness. So some athletes and some countries just have way more access to like better equipment or better training spots, in the sense like places where they can train properly. Instead of like a random ground, they have an actual built stadium, that kind of thing. And yeah, you know why? It's because of the money. Like if you have money, you can do better training, in the sense. Of course, there are definitely exceptions, like all the earlier Kenyan runners. They definitely wouldn't really have gotten the best training facility, but they are really good at running. So it's possible to still do stuff, but it's still a big issue. And there are some countries that don't even have either the money or the motivation or the programs to actually train their talent, or even get like maybe poor people who are actually really talented, get them to train and go get into the Olympics. And the thing is, as usual, I only know about like 3 countries. So I happen to know that in India this happens quite a lot. There's probably a lot of people who are really talented, as we see in the movies now. There's a lot of movies that show, oh, there's like these people who are really talented in the village, but they never really get the chance to actually shine, and they have to use their own means to train and do stuff like that. So yeah, and as usual, it seems like I only know about Singapore, India, and France. So yeah, today I mentioned India. How fun. Okay, anyways. So this topic of fairness in general will become more and more important as the technology improves and as we reflect on the records of, all these people, all the athletes that have made records before. So will the rich ones get the lion's share of medals and records, or will the others have a chance? Right, that's the question I leave you with before I end. Yeah, like before I move to the before I end segment. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. So before I end, some smaller stuffs. Yeah, that's really what I've written here as my title. How fun! So first thing is the Cold War and Olympics. So did you know that in the Cold War you technically don't have a direct war? Okay, I mean they actually had direct war in the form of proxy wars. So I'm not sure what that means, but okay, cool. So, the US and USSR during the Cold War were like fighting in other ways by sending things to the moon and, of course, participating in the Olympics. Yeah, trying to win each other in sports. So, since sports are kind of like a play version of war, the US and USSR truly really competed in sports events. They were also kind of annoyed when Olympics was happening in each other's territory, that kind of thing. Like, so if the Olympics was happening in Russia, then the US wouldn't want to participate, and vice versa. They'll try to boycott it in a sense. So yeah, I think that'll be quite fun to read about. So if you want to read about it, you can search it up, or if there's any links that I put below, you can look through those links. Okay. So the second issue, like the second smaller stuff that I can talk about is the thing about North and South Korea. Yes, of course they are a product of the Cold War actually. Let's face it, this division was technically a product of the Cold War. But instead of, distancing, we are looking at how the Olympics brought them together. In a way, like, they participated together in the Olympics of 20, was it the Winter Olympics? Yeah, I think Winter Olympics. So that's pretty nice feels for once, something nice that came out. And the third thing that you can probably look at is people who are participating independently or people who are actually stateless and they're participating in the Olympics. So these are two pretty interesting things that you should probably know more about or try to read up more about if you are into this kind of topic, I suppose. If you're not into it, then I guess just know about it and then go about doing other things. So the first one is basically independent participation. This usually happens when a country's Olympic committee is dissolved due to various reasons. So if you want to know more details, just look at the Wikipedia. I think that's pretty, it has quite a lot of details already, so you can just look at that. And for the stateless athletes, we look at something called the Refugee Olympic Team. And this is actually quite nice, to be honest. It feels kind of nice if you hear about it because it allows these people who do not have a state, they're refugees, to actually participate in the Olympics, and that seems interesting in its own way. It gives them something to be proud of in a way. Although, yeah, I mean, it has its own complications and stuff like that. So it's also a bit hard for them to actually train because they don't really have a state. So they have to do it on their own and figure out how to get into the Olympics to begin with. But still, there is such a thing, and that's pretty cool. Anyways, we are kind of done. So the conclusion is, I literally wrote just say something. I do not know what to say. So the conclusion is that the Olympics as a whole isn't just an event that sit in front of the TV and watch it for 10 days and you're like, ooh, wow, cool stuff that I could probably never do, that kind of thing, and then you just shut the TV off and then look at other things instead. It's more than just that. It's really, there's a lot of things that go behind the scenes. Like there's a lot of economic consideration, there's a lot of actual people considerations. Actually, there's a lot of other issues that actually surround the Olympics every year. There's all news that comes out and a lot of things that you can probably take note of. There could be stuff like maybe the gender difference, or like, like discrimination and stuff like that also happens, or maybe how different countries do different things during the Olympics and stuff like that. So it really is a thing that attracts a lot of attention and a lot of news, and that news doesn't just have to be sports related, it can be literally anything. So yeah, there's a lot of things going on, and it's worthwhile knowing a thing or two about it, even if you do not care about sports for the most part. And yeah, that's about it. I'm done. uh if you found this video useful, please press the like button and subscribe. And yes, I know that I'm not trying to make this the longest video in my channel. That is going to be the social linguistics one for now. Or is it? I think there's probably a longer one. Oops, never mind, that's not important. This is not definitely not the longest video. So yeah, if you found it useful, yeah, I already told you what to do. And with that, I would like to say thank you and bye.